Do you want to talk about Charleston and Brooklyn? Maybe did you observe anything in that game?
Did observe things, and I think you can get the board fired up.
Okay,
This
fire up the
was
board.
maybe the results of the weekend. If you look across the expanse of the USL, Brooklyn has been a team that's been up and down this year. They have been good defensively to my eye and very organized, certainly. And this felt like the match where Marlon LeBlanc completely understood we've got this very narrow pitch at Maimonides Park. We can bolster that by using a pretty narrow defensive approach to stop a centrally oriented Charleston team
Mm-hmm.
from doing what they do best, and then use that as the springboard to really be effective in the counterattack. So as you see, you're kind of moving from this baseline, I'd call it a 4-4-2 into a 4-1-3-2, give or take. And it was kind of man oriented, particularly with Jaden Cervania marking Kirill Pahomov
Mm-hmm.
in that Charleston midfield. In that dynamic, Cervania is ostensibly a forward in this shape. So he's sitting a little bit deeper. Brooklyn still wants to have a second player up so you can go man to man against the center backs. It becomes Stefan Stojanovic. Stojanovic played for LeBlanc in Philly. He's been around the block in this league. He pushes up. So then you've got the central presence. You force Charleston wide. In this example, let's say Nathan Messer is going to be receiving at left back. You can drop off the marking. So Cervania realizes Pahomov is no longer available. I'm going to close to the ball, make sure that Messer is trapped at the sideline, but have the eyes in the back of my head to see, hey, I can have this pressing shadow and deny a pass back into the midfield. And time in, time out, Brooklyn kept on pressing these patterns, forcing turnovers, and then you've got a bunch of technical attackers in tight space to immediately get upfield. And it becomes Cervania and Marcus Anderson and only off the weak side, really taking Charleston to task in a way that we hadn't yet seen from Brooklyn this year.
It really was a very well crafted approach. Again, another manager utilizing the tool at his disposal, which is a narrow field. That's not a bad thing. That is just smart management. And utilizing this man to man thing. And I understand why, because of that narrow field, which I have to imagine is the instructive force, I understand Ben Pierman going away from the back three because if there is a game that he could get away with it, it's this one against a Brooklyn team that is realistically, physically, talent wise, outmanned against Charleston on a narrow surface. Charleston should have the quality advantage to take advantage of that. And I feel like the ways that Marlon LeBlanc mitigated Charleston's edges extremely strong, and then Anderson was just unbelievable, and that was the difference in the game.
And Anderson deserves note because he's the other half of the equation
Yeah,
here. Everything went right defensively. You did what you needed to do to execute. Anderson has a superior ability to dribble past guys in tight space, very sharp as an off-ball mover, unselfish when he needs to be, like really willing to make the final pass after having drawn the defense his way. He to me looked like a player that'll be effective in MLS at some point. And
yeah.
for now, he's the best fit for what Brooklyn is trying to do. And that's with much love to JC Obregon. But if this is the play style, Anderson has to be the guy at the nine spot.
This game very much so screamed to me, "Hey, Philadelphia Union, um, bring me home. I like it in Philadelphia. I'd like to go back now." And like that's no slight on what Brooklyn are building. Brooklyn's a great place to live. John, you can attest first person. Um, but yeah, like this was a different kind of class and level that we saw from him, and that does not mean I think him and JC Obergon can totally coexist and bring the best out of each other. As like a uh, I'm trying
Him in that
to
Sylvania
find
role, let him be physical on the drop. Like he
yeah.
did that in Westchester a lot of the time. Yeah.
The question is, can you integrate all three of them when you include Olney into this? And can those players exist in all the same kind of central areas? Like that, I don't know the answer to that, but that's a good problem to have if you are to have a problem.
And I think Only did really well to restrict himself and be composed about when am I supposed to be stepping inside. Like it was a very measured performance from him in terms of his movement, understanding what he needed to do on the weak side when the ball was towards the opposite side of the field, sharp movement and transition as well. He's a player who, if you're thinking about loan destinations, maybe would be better off in a more open system. And I think it speaks well to his maturity as a player that he has done well and is increasingly finding a fit for LeBlanc.
Well, and that's John. That's been an increasing topic of conversation whenever I do get the chance to talk to these MLS Next Pro coaches ahead of matches that I'm calling. Is how can we expose these guys the maximum amount of tactical frameworks? Some programs don't operate that way. Some programs want to have guys consistently operate in a very specific way. Like Junior Gonzalez can speak to that firsthand with what his role was with LAFC and their way of playing and how they want it to be. But a lot of these managers are kind of livening up to the fact that, like, hey, actually the best developmental tool is to have guys exposed to a myriad of different roles that not only makes them more useful to the senior team because they can do different jobs, fit into the holes that are required throughout the course of a long season, but moreover allows them to conceive about the game in a less robotic way and hone in instinct as opposed to routine. And like for only his development, I actually think this could be a massive opportunity for him to grow as a player. And same thing for Anderson.
Yeah, and it's easy to fixate on Anderson. Only finishes this game with the second most pass attempts of any Brooklyn player, 7 passes in the final third. It's less flashy than maybe some other pieces that Brooklyn had in this match, but only played his part. And again, it's the unselfishness.
Mm-hmm.
He understands where the play is moving, how he needs to contribute. That's not always easy for someone who is going on loan and wants to show that they've made progress, take the headline, get the goal. That's a testament to Marlon LeBlanc's coaching, probably first and foremost.
Yeah.
But again, speaks to the maturity of this loan class.
I just think to pick up on the LeBlanc point, unsurprising in a sense that to me he's been one of the 5 or 6 best managers in the season so far. Uh, his flexibility, while also presenting similar principles that like we anticipated to be involved in this Brooklyn project, are all there. I really have enjoyed watching how they attack different games. This is a team who I think is, and he said it as much this week as well. They've had the ball high up the pitch. They've tried to control the field and do all these things. This week they wanted to have Charleston, a team that I think are pretty good on the ball. I think we'd all agree on that. Have the ball.
I'm
They
starting to
chose to
get.
sit.
I'm starting to question that fact, but we can talk about that in a minute.
Sure. And then they don't have one guy that made them that the last couple of years, and that might
Right.
be the one missing piece. We've talked about that a ton over the first month of the year. But at the same time, I just went back and looked at it while you guys were chatting. The 4 years that Marlon LeBlanc was in charge at Philadelphia Union 2, they ranked third, second, and third in defensive actions per game.
Mm-hmm.
Defensive actions, that is just all encompassing. Hey, they do
Super against the
defend
ball. Yeah.
super against the ball, but like always active against the ball. Because you
Yes.
can be against the ball and just let a team carry it up the field.
Sure.
You're always against the ball, but you're always operating. You're always trying to find a little maneuver to force somebody into where you want them to be so you can press somewhere and win the ball.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you're high pressing. That doesn't mean you sit back and bait into certain things. They have been, again, third, second, third, the 4 years he was in charge at Philly Union 2 in defensive actions. Who leads the league in the USL Championship in 2026 in defensive actions?
Brooklyn.
Brooklyn. They had 164 in this match. That was 10 more than any other team in the league this past weekend. They want you to have the ball, but they want to make you very uncomfortable when you have the ball, and they are very comfortable doing that. That has been consistent for Brooklyn all season long, no matter if they are playing Route 1 direct football against another direct team like match day 1 against Indy. They're sitting deeper and allowing Charleston to have a bit of the ball. And basically saying, Charleston, you don't have Aaron Malloy to break us down anymore. You can have it. We'll win it. They have been tactically flexible while keeping the main statistical and tactical principles that got Marlon LeBlanc praise and got him this job, and they are executing those spectacularly to begin their first season as a club.
Yeah, and here's the deal. We say all these things about Philly, and that was a mandate from on high. That's a very sporting director oriented club. It's about a methodology of play. But we also saw, and Marlon has talked about this, he went on US All Access and spoke to this very topic. Spent the entire year preceding taking this job with the U.S. Youth National Team, coaching and developing a much more possessionally oriented style of play. So what we do know is he has that arrow in his quiver, and given all the situational factors, has started to curtail a way of play that makes sense for this group right now. And that pragmatism and proficiency in communicating different types of ideas is why we were so high on him as a manager heading into this year. I think that's playing out. It's not. I don't think it makes them a playoff team, but they are going to sneak up and get some teams, especially at home this year. That much I think has been guaranteed at this point.
That's the through line, right? You think about the Indy game, you think about this game. It's a goal in the first 25 or 30 minutes, very organized defending in low block. And now it's the aptitude on the counterattack. You're seeing the growth live, and hopefully that'll be they're going to turn Memori's Park into a fortress, hopefully.
Yeah, Charleston had 30 box touches in this game. Indy had 43 in that game that you're referencing. And it's two of the top 6 or 7 totals this year in which that team, for box touches, in which the team didn't score a goal. For a very young team that's playing together for the first time, 1 time's probably lucky. 2 times is still probably lucky. But if it continues to happen, that is a sign of organized box defending and not allowing those box touches in areas where they're dangerous and moreover, not allowing a shot, resulting from that. So, yeah. Charleston, 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, kind of what it felt like.
They need JD Torres so bad, bro. And I know he got like frozen out at the end of last year, and like Malloy is like the main jump to because that's the one they moved interleague or in league. JD Torres would have scored a goal in this game and probably made it a little bit tighter, and we don't know how Brooklyn would have responded to that. I am
Dude,
so
yeah.
certain JD Torres would have just done something cool.
JD
And,
would
like,
have relished the opportunity to play on a pitch this narrow because he
correct.
wants the chance to take people on.
That's not an indictment either against Jeremy Kelly because I think he's been a really good player for them this year. Lauren Casado is going to have his moments and has been a good player to start
Had
the
one
season
last week.
too. It's just not the same level of like obvious I'm a baller. He's going to do something in this match that makes a difference. And they miss that in that front 4, front 5 for me. Numbers aside, and I like to bring the numbers to the table. JD has a bunch of those that back him. But there's a vibe. Ewan puts in the chat. Spontaneous is correct. There's a spontaneity to what he does that is unpredictable, dynamic, and necessary when you're a team that's as dominant as Charleston would like to be. Then we get into the dominant part, and that's where Aaron Malloy brings his beautiful Irish brain back into the fold that this team misses as well.
John, say something because I'm trying to find a quote that Ben gave me last year about Torres specifically.
Sure. I mean, Messer and Martinez combined to play 23 crosses in this game. That is not what you think of when you think about the Charleston Battery. There is just an inability to penetrate, and it totally ties back to what you're saying, Ryan. There isn't that gravitational player who can make something out of nothing and demands your respect. What it means is that Charleston really gets jammed against the sidelines, is too slow to move across, and is too easy to pin down. And yeah, there are moments where Jeremy Kelly has a bit of inspiration, receives in the half space, does something really clever. It's not enough of that. I think Swan and Barry are still finding their footing. Casado is an interesting proposition because he doesn't really attack the box in the way that you probably need of the winger playing opposite Kelly. And much of the time, when Wilmer Cabrera, who is more natural in that position, has come into games, he's come in as a striker out and out, which I don't hate in principle. But when you think of Charleston as a set of complementary pieces, I just want to see a different deployment for how they're working with it.
Yep.
It does feel like Charleston is close at times, and yet they're never building that momentum, finding the missing piece that we just keep waiting for.
The quote was this. I think it furthers exactly what's been said so far. JD Torres is the most clever footballer that I have ever coached. Like that, flat out. Wasn't qualified by anything, just that. And I believe that was before a game against Indy 11 last year. And they need that guy who can do it unassisted without the tutor, if you will, and Ben Pierman leading them to the correct answer.